right. Well, welcome back to another edition of Roof Talk. I'm excited today. I have Matt DiBara here, and we are going to talk about all the things you can do right and wrong in construction. Matt's company is the Contractor Consultants. And Matt, you don't look like it, but you've been in this business for 100 years.
Yeah, just about. No, the family four generations, but I have the scars on my back. You can't see them, but they're
I
there.
believe that. So how did you, okay, so you come from a long lineage of contractors. How did you get started in this business, and what do you do with your organization that helps contractors?
So I started like any contractor, does, right at the bottom. So first day on the job, 9 years old, I literally, dad's glory, right? I show up and he hands me a trash bag and he's like, pick up all the trash. So I quickly pick up all the trash, around our area. We're building a big stone wall for a bunch of different homes. And he goes, no, the whole job site. He says, go to this one. This is the super. This is the carpenter. This is the electrician. So that was my start in construction. And I was crazy enough to fall in love with it and stay with it ever since.
That's amazing. So you worked in this since you were 9 years old. That's like me. I started it was a landscaping business, and I started it at 13. And as people might know the story, I had to hire kids that played high school football that had pickup trucks. So I would like scope them out and I'd be like, oh, that kid has a pickup truck. I'm going to get him to work for me because I was 13. I couldn't drive. So I couldn't get to my own job sites without having to hire people that could take me there. But so you started in this industry. And then at what point, what were the pain points that you saw that caused you to create your company?
Well, there was a lot. I mean, I'm a weird case study, right? Because my dad had this would have been 22, 23 years ago, right? My dad had an old timer who was in his, he called him an old time Mason. A guy worked with my dad for my grandfather taught him, right? So he was in his late 60s, early 70s, 20 years ago. So these are the people I learned from. So I saw construction from a very different lens. And I got to be mentored by these people that got involved in the industry because they loved it. And then I saw in the background, like I sat with my dad when the only marketing thing we did was the yellow pages. We used to get pizza with this guy every 6 months and he'd be like, Mr. DiBara, I think it's time for a full page ad. My dad's like, no, I have pages. And that was it. That was marketing. It was twice a year and it was pizza, soda, and, a little kid watching this. And so I've seen construction from this really interesting lens of like humble family roots that came here, did it because they loved it. We never set out to be contractors. Full disclosure, like my great grandfathers, both of them were artists. Like they like to build with their hands. And we joke, like, when was the official time we became contractors? And it was like when they worked for people who spoke English because they lived in an Italian section outside of Boston and they just worked for their neighbors. It was like, hey, can you help me with this, Michael LaRusso or my other grandfather? And so that's where we came out. But, there was a lot of pain I saw around business owners struggling. Like I never saw my dad growing up. He was always working. I spent time with him as a kid. Like if I wanted to spend time with my dad, I had a trowel in my hand, I was breaking stone or I was digging hole. Like that was it. And so I started as I got older to pay attention and I could never understand how some companies had 1,000 employees and ran so well and why my dad did so many things right, but there were areas where he struggled. And that paradigm always fascinated me, and he'd say things like, no one ever works as hard as family, or, no one's ever gonna, you got to be there on the job. And so I had these hardwired, like limiting beliefs, if you will, that my dad, hard worker, great guy, but I couldn't wrap my head around, well, how is this company got 1,000 employees? The owner hasn't been there in 5 years. Like clearly there's something we're missing. And so that set the tone, for my quest to understand this industry in the best way possible.
It makes a lot of sense. And that is usually how you have to come from it, right? You have to have some sort of belief structure that gets deconstructed. I mean, we're talking about construction here, but at some point you got to start taking the bricks apart and you got to say, why is this, right? And it's the most important question you can ever ask in any business is why. Like, why do we do it this way? Why do we believe that we have to go to Home Depot 5 times a day, right? Why do we have all of these limiting beliefs and constrictions? And a lot of times they're just collective illusions because they're not even just restrictions that we've been taught by, our bosses or by the business that we're in. The whole industry believes those things, so it's not like you can go someplace else and see it done differently. Most of the businesses, and you're right, it's under about 1,000 people, they have a lot of limiting beliefs, but there's some things that those bigger companies do. What I like to say is they don't look at the energy part of the business, where how much time and labor do they have to put in it. They approach things differently. and they say, you know what, let me just sit back for a second here and figure out, is there a faster way from point A to point Z that I don't have to go through all of these steps and I can still get a good result? So it sounds like that's what you found with the type of business that you work on.
Well, I grew it through studying other people and trial and error. I first understood marketing and I was obsessed with marketing. I was like, how can we control the amount of jobs? Because to me, it always scared me. People would say word of mouth. And I saw many, many companies when that word of mouth dried up. It's like, even big companies doing tens of millions, if not 100. Like it was, so I became obsessed with mine was very fear driven. I was always scared because I'm coming from this fourth generation family where it's like we had things somewhat established. Like we had references, we knew how to do good work. And I'm like, man, I don't want to mess this up. I don't want to be the one to screw this up. My dad used to say, don't waste these 3 generations. I'm like, thanks, Pop.
Exactly.
We'll keep you around. No pressure, right? So, that's what I did. And I studied it. And it was like, for me, my journey was simple. It was like, I got control of the marketing, the branding, the positioning. Then I could control the lead flow and what was coming in. And then I started to understand that I'm a business person running a construction company, no longer just a contractor. When I started to make the mental shift, things became better because I started I didn't know anything about business. We had probably 5-6 crews before I even really understood how to read a P&L. I didn't have the background in business. And so when I started supplementing that, studying those great people, and then the biggest one was when I really figured out the hiring, and that was through that's really like the backbone of the contractor consultants. Yeah. And that came from massive pain. I mean, I was at the pinnacle, sort of been about 2018, 2019, pinnacle of the business. I'm doing 2 celebrity homes. I'm doing a big commercial project. I was doing something with the Veterans Association. I'm like, my great grandfather's got on a boat for this moment. And then things, just like life, it came crashing down. I wasn't paying attention to the hiring needs and the fact that the ways we were hiring were not working. My team was like, hey, Matt, we keep doing this. And I'm like, we just sold another $1 million project. Yes. We're all freaking out and everything's great. And then things just really hit us. And that painful experience, I lost nearly $1 million in the span of probably 4 weeks. I mean, it was quick and it was overruns and it was and then I found out I had my daughter on the way shortly after. It was just, it was wild, right? Wild ride.
Wow. And then you're going into a period of time, which unbeknownst to you, where your costs are going to radically be altered in every single direction all at the same time. I mean, that's what happened with a lot of construction companies is, the ones that aren't around now from 5 years ago is because they didn't, they were used to updating their estimate Excel spreadsheet once every 4 or 5 years. And all of a sudden they had to do it every week and they just weren't familiar with that.
Yeah. And there was a lot of changes, but the biggest thing I realized was that I grew up a vocational high school student, right? So I went to a vocational high school, placed second in the country in bricklaying. And I knew the labor market was shifting, but I wasn't paying attention at that time. I wasn't concerned with it. And I think the biggest lesson I learned is the emphasis on hiring and some of the strategies that work now today in this market. If you're a business owner and you're not obsessed with retaining and finding and retaining top talent, that's I'm looking at, I see a lot of roll-ups and, companies being acquired and they're like, give me the personnel list. They're less concerned with, it's crazy. I have a good friend of mine and he, does big M&As and he's like, we just want the personnel list. We're less, the multiple doesn't matter. The branding, he's like, we'll slap our branding on it. We'll use our customer lists. We want the personnel, the trucks, and maybe the previous customer data. It's wild what's happening now.
It's interesting you say that because in the tech industry 10 years ago, we called it acqui-hire. So it was acquire and hire. We would acquire companies solely to get their talent. We didn't even care about the software. I have a friend who was acqui-hired. And now he's a CEO of a major company in Silicon Valley, but his little tiny firm was acquired by this big firm. And when he got there, he's like, well, here's the software. And they're like, we don't care about that. We have no interest in the software. We wanted you and you and you and you and you because we saw what you as a team could do. And I do think there's a limiting factor in so many of our businesses where we've been told we shouldn't work in the business, but work on the business. And we think that's a hard and fast rule, but sometimes you got to get in there and find out what's happening with the dynamics of the people and make sure you have the right people in the right seats doing the right roles. I almost feel like sometimes that working on the business versus in the business, people are thinking that that's like a static thing when it really should be dynamic. Most of your time should be on the business, not in the business. So tell me a little bit about hiring and how you do things different.
So yeah, I mean, we had that whole issue that I mentioned, and then I set out on this quest. I was like, I'm gonna find the formula of what works, and I hired consultants. I traveled the country. I read books, seminars, and I couldn't find any one thing. But I started to piece together different things that I had done in the past that worked for me, things that I saw other people do. Like there was it was amazing. I'd go to somebody. I was at a seminar, right? And this paints the picture of why it's so important to diversify strategies. We have 37 different ways to find candidates. They're all proven, they all work, but specific to your local market. Big star next to that note. I was at a seminar and I was speaking on behalf of hiring. They had a panel. They had one guy and he was a little bit old school. And he's like, you got to go to church. You got to kiss babies, shake hands, meet people, stop on job sites. And, that's his background. Really nice guy, Southern accent that I can't do. And then the other woman, she comes from tech, right? Entered into construction. Yeah. She's like, no, it's all about data. It's about analytics. It's about, online postings and optimizing headlines. And I said, wait a minute. It's about both of those things. Yes. And then all of these other strategies, because you don't know in your local market, like we have a strategy that we teach where we basically, one of the things you can do is audit your competitors, both locally as well as big companies far away, and find out what they're offering for pay, what they're offering for incentives, where they're posting. It's a little preliminary work to set you up for success, but it's so market specific. Like there are some companies that we do the hiring for, and it's like easy. We turn everything on, we post all our job boards, we use our formula, and it just comes in. Others, we have to try many different tricks and tips from the methods we've created. And that's the big thing with hiring, is that there's no one size fits all. It's like, hey, here's all the things that are proven.
That is such a great point. So tell me a little bit about like, how does your business work right now? Like what is the work that you're doing?
So we created didn't really intend to build this out as a business, right? Like I did this, people saw me and said, Matt, you're not as stressed. And then I started helping contractors I knew. Then I got involved with trade associations and they were like, wow. And everyone I was talking to was getting really good results. And so I'm like, I'm going to make this course. I'm going to put it together and I'm going to, we're going to distribute this content. And we made a 63 video module course. We got endorsed by ZipRecruiter, Indeed. Co-founder of ZipRecruiter is actually one of the people on the website, but found that a lot of contractors were too busy to take that. And also there was some flack. They were like, well, it's a course, but can you actually do it? So I said, you know what? We're just going to do it for contractors. So we launched Outsource Hiring, where basically we build everything out for them, right? All the assets. So you need a strong foundation. You need a career video, which is a short video that showcases who you are, shows your team. They're talking about your company, not you. You need the right job postings, keyword tested headlines. You need all of these core assets, graphics. That's your foundation. But what we really do for business owners is we handle all of the boring parts so that like you just show up to the final vetted approved interview. That's it. So candidate screening, initial candidate contact, pre-vetting questions, hiring letters, letting candidates down and saying no, like offer letter, all of that is done by our team. And it's just like, oh, here's another pre-vetted interview on your calendar worth your time.
That I came many years ago. I built a couple businesses in the lead gen industry, and we're all familiar with Angie's List and Home Advisor and all those kind of things. Back then it was Service Magic, and I sold a company to them. And one of the reasons that people really liked that service was it was pre-vetted, and there were different levels, right? There was the, chum in the water, just like everybody else. But the leads you really wanted were the leads you paid a little bit more for, that you knew somebody had phone verify that, that's a real person. They have a real project. They have money, which is sometimes we get this as contractors. You go out and then you're like, it's going to be like 40 grand. And they're like, well, I'll have to work on putting that kind of cash together. Well, it's like, what did you waste all my time for? But that pre-vetted opportunity that aligns with the requirements that you're looking for is pretty awesome, because it takes a lot of time to find the right people. And we tend to forget that time is money. It's the same thing, except for it doesn't replenish like money does.
100%. And if you're listening and you're asking yourself, well, what are some strategies that you can use like right away? I would say, if you're not familiar with the term geofencing, powerful strategy. Yep. Putting an invisible fence around your competitors and showing your hiring ads, right? Powerful strategy. The career video, that short video to showcase your company. Here's another one. If you're looking to hire those hard to find 10, 15-year company, foreman or lead installers, that's what everybody wants, right? They've been in the business. They're trusted with a company truck. One strategy you can use is set up a what we call a vendor partnership. So you approach your suppliers and you say, hey, I'd like to sponsor coffee and donuts every morning, or maybe once a week, depending on your palate, from the hours of 6 a.m. to 8 or 9 a.m., right? Your busiest window. In exchange for that, I want one small thing. I want to be able to put a stack of recruiting cards on that table, right? And so what happens is, and we found this all across the country, we have clients. And what happens is that one day that foreman shows up 3 minutes late, he's yelled at by his boss for the last time. He's waiting to get his truck loaded, and he goes, "Whoa, they do coffee and donuts here now? Yeah, it's by this company that sponsors it. Hiring, right on the card, QR code to scan the career video, top pay, maybe the hourly max that you offer. You're getting in front of those people." So that's just another thing we found people do. And I still get emails every now and again from speeches and talks where they're like, "I hired somebody from this. This is amazing." So
That's, and now it makes me think, like, some of our locations have food trucks that show up during lunch, and a lot of contractors show up for that, right? And it's like, that's pretty clever. I don't know if we ever put a hiring sign out there and said, "Hey, look, you're out working in the field. How about come work here in the lot where we load the trucks?" And those guys. Now, I'm sure my contractors wouldn't like us poaching their people, but you never know. They might know somebody. They might have a brother-in-law. And everybody's always, in that industry, a lot of people come from referrals. So it's asking the right questions, and it's being in the right place at the right time. But you're so right. I mean, I think people are I work in the trucking industry a lot as well. And, every truck driver out there is one conversation away from going to someplace else. They just had it, right? Usually there's a lot of abuse in that industry. And listen, we know in the construction industry, this is not easy work. Standing up on a roof in 120-degree Phoenix and doing a tear off today, you couldn't, there's not enough money in the world to pay me to do that, right? That's a very difficult, laborious job. And you got to feel appreciated to want to come to work and do that kind of work.
Well, that's a big thing. And I think one of the other things we cover is different incentives. So two ways to look at it. One is incentivizing people to find your candidates. So we call it incentives that actually work. So I hired, there was a laborer that I hired years ago for my construction company, my personal company. And it was a male nurse, and I was getting some blood work done. And I said, "Hey, I'm always doing two things, promoting my business and hiring." So yeah, business is great. I said, "Do you know anyone looking for work?" "No, I don't." He's like putting the needle thing in, right? Whatever. He's not even paying attention. I said, "Oh, okay." I said, "Well, if you do," he had a Dodgers keychain hanging from his pocket. I said, "We give away really good Dodger tickets if you happen to know somebody." He stops and he goes, "You know what? My nephew just came back from college. He was actually looking for a job." And so it's these little things where if you can individualize the incentives, like if you say, "Okay, Tom's been working for me 20 years. He knows a ton of people in the industry." Instead of saying, "We're going to give you $500, what if Tom and his wife, let's say, haven't been on a really good vacation in a long time? And you say, "You know what, Tom, if you do find this person, I'm going to organize an amazing, like, what's it worth to you? Is it worth 500, 1,000? You pay a recruiter 20% of the salary, right?" So when you start factoring on that, it's like, what if you gave Tom an amazing vacation for $1,500, and you find this person, and now he's vetted him and walked him in the door. There's mutual relationship, right? Tom, like, he's already talking your company up, so you're not coming in cold. Like, there's all these little things we can do to get an immediate result when it comes to hiring.
That is really great. And it's this concept called pattern interruption, right? Where you've got to interrupt that pattern. You can say it all day long and people go, yeah, whatever. But when you go, "And I'll buy you some Dodger tickets if you," well, hold on a second. I didn't know we were talking about Dodger tickets here. That is really clever. I love how you do that. And so tell me, business model wise, are you usually engaged by the company in helping them create their strategy? How does that sort of work?
So we disrupt the recruiter model. What I didn't like I don't get me wrong. I think there's an opportunity for us, like our company, we partner with contractors, right? So we build out these assets they need. They're theirs. So we get the strong foundation. It's like, look, the analogy in marketing would be like, look, I can generate all the traffic you want, but if your website's not good, there's nothing I can do for you, right? If I'm generating people to a poor website, if your photos are horrible, if you don't have any photos, it's like, well, how do I get a client to convert? You've got no reviews, no photos, and no website, right? So it's the analogy now is in hiring, we build all these assets out that they need so that when a prospective candidate comes in, they go, "Wow, I want to apply." And then we handle all of the administrative stuff, because the last thing I want to do for a company is come in and say, now, you need to answer to the 27 resumes you got today. You got to sift them, sort them, screen them, schedule them. Like, it's just, they're coming to us saying we don't have time. And we're like, so we take all of that off their plates. And our goal is to work with the company long-term. It's to solve a problem, become their hiring and retention partner.
I love it. Matt, tell everybody how they can find out more about you. And if they want to reach out, how do they do that?
The contractor consultants, plural.com. Real simple, easy.
Matt, thanks so much. This was a lot of fun. And I think there's a lot of great tips in here. Because listen, even though the market is slowing down, we're still all struggling on this hiring thing. and it's going to pick up. It always does, right? Now's the time to bring people on and get ready for the future. So Matt, thanks for being a guest here today on Rooftop.
Thanks for having me.